And Mike, how can people become part of those programs?
So there's a couple of ways. We are at the end of all the feedback sessions, we're going to be providing a form. So if you go to the resources section and you look at any of my updates, at the bottom there's a link to sign up for the beta program. Another easy way is if you just email product feedback at homegauge.com. That's a mailbox that we're monitoring. You just say that you'd like to be part of the beta program. And then typically what happens is we may ask some clarifying questions. We usually qualify people for different betas, and it's based on specifically what feedback we're looking for, what level the product's at. Could be if something's really in its infancy, we want certain people with a certain skill set, or certain people who meet, perhaps it's a single inspector, perhaps this thing's really new and it doesn't have anything for multi-inspectors yet, so we may narrow down kind of the user. So we usually ask some qualifying questions. People go into the database and then we kind of gather those and we pull them in for some of the sessions. We also use those groups for focus groups. We're always running focus groups. We'll pull people together and say, hey, look, would you be interested? Be an hour-long session. It's probably going to be in WebEx or Zoom for the next few months, but it'd be like, hey, look, we're looking at this. Can you look through some wireframes with us? Give us some feedback. Could you use a particular feature on the page so we can monitor how you use it?
Great. And of course, when the world gets back to normal, Mike and his team had started attending real world conferences as well. And when we get back to that point, you'll be able to find Mike and his team there of product managers to talk about joining those programs more. I've been a part of a lot of programs like that for various software, and it's the best way that you can help a company like us take the software in the direction that you want to. I do want to get back to that original question though about things we did in Q1 and what's upcoming. So we obviously expanded the beta programs as per goal. We released Schedule Now successfully as per goal. A couple of other big things we talked about were general desktop writer updates and iOS updates. Can you just talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I hear a common theme that I hear when I go and chat to inspectors is there's a lot of outstanding items that people would like addressed in the existing tool set. So they're excited about what's coming. They're like, hey, that's great, but that may not apply to me yet. How about this thing in my desktop software? How about this thing? I'm having trouble with iOS in particular. So what we've done is we are dedicating a lot of resources to our new products, but then we're also making sure that we stabilize the existing platform. We're not leaving anyone behind. So iOS was identified as a big area where we needed to do some work to kind of patch up some of the software. So we made a release, it was in March, and then we have another one lined up. I'd say it's probably about 4 to 6 weeks out from the App Store. And that's really focused on the main things that people are calling into support about. So I'm speaking with support every week to get a summary of the main calls that are coming in. So there's one release for iOS and there's another one in the pipeline. Desktop Writer 5.3.9, I believe that went out, it was in February. So anyone who's not on that and has a subscription, make sure you go and upgrade. We address some of the major issues that people are calling in about. We will be committing to making lots more bug fixes and lots more of these, what we call incremental updates. There is a milestone release coming in the summer as well for the Desktop Writer, where we're introducing some new features as well. So we'll have more news on that. I expect it will be around mid-summer time.
Great, thanks, Mike. And we're getting a lot of good questions in, so I'm going to keep rattling on. But I do think there's one important thing that came up as a question a lot for the last session. And if you didn't catch Mike's last FAQ, it's probably worth talking on very briefly. And that is to summarize really this difference between our desktop software and our web-based or cloud-based software and what happens to those two. And very briefly, I do suggest you watch that video for more detail, but our customers are going to have access to both. There is not going to be an additional charge for you to use both. You will be able to have, you'll be able to work in the way that is most comfortable to you, essentially, and what your business is going to be. And as Mike says, we will continue to work on the desktop version with incremental and major update releases. Okay, so I'm going to jump to a couple of quick questions, Mike, that I think will be fast for you to answer. And I do want to make sure we are getting to people's submitted questions. So the first one, which I know I'm hitting you randomly with, so let us know. Is HomeGauge working in conjunction with any continuous radon monitor companies to coordinate the two softwares to work together?
We're not currently. If that's something that there's demand for, definitely throw it in the, shoot me an email at product feedback at HomeGauge and we'll take a look.
Okay, great. I think that's an interesting one. I haven't seen that come up at all, actually, since. There's a few questions coming in around the future of the industry and the product. Daniel, for instance, has said, how do you feel about HomeGauge's software and, so to speak, state-of-the-art software navigation? He says, I asked this as a new home inspector that has dove into software and trying to navigate it and found it a little bit difficult at first. Can you just address that first, and then we'll talk about the broader industry and its future afterwards?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely we'll acknowledge that the software as it currently stands, there's a learning curve, and there's quite, I think we've got the best training in the industry. Shanti does an amazing job with the training. Our support team is incredible. However, we should make it so that our software is as easy as intuitive to use as possible. It is, I know inspectors are very detail oriented and they have a very difficult job to do. We should make our tools as streamlined and as easy to use as possible. So that if you're a new inspector, it's hard enough getting up and running. It's hard enough doing your job and making sure that you're catching everything. You shouldn't have to kind of have all these traps and hurdles within the software. So one of the big things that we're taking on board with the new web writer and with anything new that we're doing is we're trying to make it as few steps as possible. We're trying to really get to the core of what's the inspector trying to do and try and get there with as few clicks and as few steps as possible. So you're going to see that certainly with Schedule Now, certainly with the new web report writer, we're streamlining all of the workflows so you can get to things as quickly as possible. And then with any of the new updates that we're making to the desktop writer, we're also trying to focus on making life easier and simplifying a lot of those menus and a lot of those options.
Great, thanks, Mike. Before we move on, there's a relevant question just to what we were talking about from Tom. Tom asks, will the platforms be interchangeable? I'm going to assume that question relates to desktop and web-based versions.
Yeah. So the things, I'll go through the things you will and won't be able to do. So what you will be able to do is you can create a report on the desktop writer. And you can distribute it in the same way through your dashboard. You can do payments, agreements, same way you can now. You'll have the option to use the web writer. And the web writer is going to work across all platforms. It's going to work in any web browser. It's going to work on any device. There'll be mobile applications, and that will also synchronize with the inspection dashboard, and you'll be able to do all the same things. The things you won't be able to do is you won't be able to start a report on the desktop writer and finish it on the web writer. That's the only distinction we're kind of making. Architecturally, they're so different that we can't give you a seamless experience across that. But we think the advantages that you're going to get with a web writer, where you could start a report in your truck on your tablet, you could go onto a property on your cell phone, take some pictures, add some notes, you can go back to your truck, or even there can be a guy at the back office finishing the report for you and sending it out. That's going to be the flexibility. So you're going to be able to work across devices and you'll be able to synchronize with all the same tools you have now. So we're not making it, it's not going to be, I hear a lot about HomeGauge version 6 and will this be 6 and will it replace what we have right now? It's additive. So you can still use the desktop software. You can have an additional option. It'll still be compatible with all the same things you have now.
And Chris Anshin asks that we're talking about the web-based writer. He says, is this available mainstream right now or in beta?
Now, this is in beta. Arpan's going to be doing a session on this. I think it is.
I'll check the time for you. He's going to be doing it at 4 p.m. Eastern, so 3 p.m. Central Time.
So yeah, Arpan's going to be taking you through that. We're going to be expanding the beta. It's coming out in the summer. So we're about 2.5 months out from releasing that to the general public.
Okay,
and
great. Thank
you. Anyone who has a subscription right now will get access to it.
Okay. So before the session, we submitted a form on our Facebook page and on the agenda page for questions. One that came up a few times, asked in various different ways, I'll summarize as, so what's happening in the inspector industry that HomeGauge is planning for, what can we inspect in terms of product work and development?
Sure. So obviously this session and today is a good opportunity for us to get more information, but I'll go through some of the themes that I'm seeing. So when I'm going out and I'm chatting to people, definitely if you've been to any of the brick and mortar conferences, it's fractured. It's really, really complicated. You're a new inspector, you're coming into the market. You've got to get certified, you've got to get trained, you've got to buy all your tools, you've got to get a website, you've got to set up an LLC. And then you enter one of these conferences and then it's, oh, well, do I need thermal imaging? Do I need this tool? Do I need that gadget? And it's so many solutions. And all of a sudden it's, should I get credit card processing through this provider? Do I need a call center? So it's really, really complicated. It's really, really fractured. And it's overwhelming for new guys. I spoke with one guy from Illinois, and he was telling me it cost $5,000 just to get set up, just the cost of entry into the market. And that's earning no money, and he's still kind of in a trainee phase where he has to go out and do some ride-alongs. He says that's $5,000, and then he says he goes to these conferences and he goes to training sessions, and he feels like he still needs to spend more money before he can get into the market. So that's something which I think has been going on. That I don't think that's particularly new, but I think I don't think it's getting any better. It's getting worse. So one of the things that we're really focused on is I think we've got a really comprehensive tool set. We're trying to simplify everything, and some of the packaging changes we're working on is trying to simplify and put everything under one roof and make it simple so that someone coming into the market, this is the one thing you need. It covers all of your base needs, gives you a website, it gives you the basic software you need. You've got a means of taking payment, you've got a means of signing agreements. It's all integrated. You're a home inspector, you're not an IT person. So that's one of the first things that we're addressing. Next, I think expectations on inspectors are so much higher. I think I'm not gonna beat on millennials or any particular generation, but it's not just having a trusted person come in and give you their opinion on property. Now it's, well, I don't really want this report's too long. I don't really like PDFs, and I don't want it this way. Can you do it in a video? Can you walk me through this? Can you walk me through that? And then you're competing with everyone else who's also got a YouTube channel and they're a marketing machine. So that I think is getting really hard. I hear a lot of inspectors where they focus on, hey, my report's really detailed. So they're really focusing on being thorough. And they might not be winning because some guy's got a really great YouTube game, this guy's really awesome on Facebook. So one of the things we're trying to do is support the inspector in the whole business. Try and give them all these services and try and let them focus on the main things that they're doing, so that they don't have to become a YouTube expert and they don't have to really up their own marketing game. We can give them the tools and some of the tips and the guides to help them do that. I'd say the thing that kind of makes me sad, I think we're all going through it with all the automation and all the tools available. I still hear also that inspectors are working really, really long hours. Just about every conference, every training I go to, it's a regular occurrence that it's not just the guys that are super slammed that have more work than they can deal with. Regular guys doing like 1 to 2 inspections a day. They do the inspection, they do the pre-work. Inspection takes them 2 to 3 hours, and then they come home and they're doing 2 to 3 hours of paperwork, making sure everything's right, sending it out, answering questions, dealing with everything. We're trying to streamline all of that. It's a dream, it's a lofty goal, but really I'd like to help inspectors with some of the ways that they're trying to get some of their time back. Some of the ways I see is guys are pulling together and they're saying, oh, we'll tackle a property with 2 or 3 guys. One guy's an electrical expert, one guy's going to do the exterior. The tools that you see in the market now aren't really tailored towards that kind of or that way of working. The web report writer, we're definitely looking that direction. So it's like, yeah, if you're a one-man shop and you're going up, we want to make this as streamlined as possible. We want to reduce the homework you have to do before you go in. And when you get on site, we want to make it so that, I just want to take a couple of pictures. Some guys don't even write the reports on their devices. Really, all they want to do is they say, hey, look, I take a bunch of pictures. I know from the picture what's up, and I'll go and write the report later. We want to support those guys in the way they work there. And then if you're one of these multi-inspector shops that kind of goes out in a crew completes it in various different steps. We want the tools to be able to support that, so that one guy can focus on the exterior, one guy can be doing electricals, and there's another guy in the back office reviewing everything at a high level. And that person's in control of whether the report goes out. And we believe that this could get towards a dream of, you go out on site, you do your homework, you finish the report in the truck, you may want to check it when you get home, but you're not working till 10, 11 o'clock trying to get everything done. You can leave site, get home, maybe do an hour's worth of paperwork, and then get on with other things that help grow your business. So those are the big things we're working on. So it's efficiency, it's working workflow, it's trying to get inspectors' time back.
I think one thing you didn't touch on there, which is interesting for people, is, of course, for those people who've been with us for a long time, we're part of a much larger enterprise these days, American Family Insurance. And what's been wonderful for the HomeGauge team and for the community, of course, is during difficult times, it's been great to make sure that the team can not have to worry about those times and stay focused on development. One of the things that you're going to hear, or the extra care members are going to hear this afternoon from American Family, is how also we're going to help the inspectors with that total view of their business by providing data that is quite unique that will help shortcut some of their inspections. And so I think that is definitely part of our North Star of helping inspectors be better, to stand out, and also to be able to get things done quicker. Mike, I'm going to hit you with a couple of questions from the Q&A session.
Go for it.
Okay, and we're not holding back. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to ask them. I have no issue at all in making Mike feel uncomfortable. Okay, so Ed asks, many times when a report is uploaded and sent to the customer, it goes to their spam file. I will receive a call while I'm doing inspections asking where is the report. 100% of the time they have it. If a text could be sent to tell them the report has been sent, that would be a huge help. So two things there: reports going to spam and text notifications.
Yep. So we do have the ability to notify people via text for certain notifications. I don't think it's as streamlined as it could be. That's something we're definitely working on. And I agree, especially now, your read rate for an email, a great read rate for an email, maybe it's 50% of the emails, if it even gets through the spam filters. Text messages are much, much higher. So we are looking at different options for communicating with inspectors and buyers. I'll actually be doing a working session on this this afternoon. So the Home Buy Dashboard review, there is a feature we're considering. It's a messaging hub, which I'd like some feedback on, which really, the idea is, as an inspector, you have a particular way that you like communicating. And I hear a lot that people like phone calls, but maybe the customers don't like communicating in that way, or maybe it's email. So what we want to do is we're exploring, hey, the buyer says their preferred way of being contacted. You set your preferred way of being contacted. We handle all the middleman piece. If you want to send emails and respond to people, they're going to receive everything via text. And if they want to respond to you via text, you'll still get it in whatever means that you want. So we're looking at how people get notifications and how people communicate. So yeah, I'd suggest turn up for this afternoon session and give us some feedback.
The other session that I think will be interesting for that is, it happens to be mine, but at 4 p.m. in the marketing track, I think it is, we're actually doing a quick 30 minutes on millennials, boomers, Gen X, Zennials, and what is now actually what some people are starting to call Gen C, which would be the COVID generation through their childhood. That's an important session because when products think about the audience, we spend a lot of time understanding how people want to communicate. And so in that session, we're going to talk about how the millennial, now they turned 40 at the top end. They have a lot of characteristics that are very different that we'll talk through, but one of them is, if the phone rings, they will often let it go to voicemail and then text the person back and say, oh, did I miss a call? Yes, you did. You did it on purpose. I can say that. I suppose I fall into that category of millennial technically. So that could also be interesting as well. Okay, so Michelle's question. Oh, thank you, Michelle. This is not a question. It's just a sweet compliment for you, Mike. We also had difficulty with maneuvering on HomeGauge when we first got started. However, the customer service phone training from HomeGauge was absolutely superior to any customer service I've ever experienced. We're maneuvering pretty smoothly these days. Thank you, Michelle. We always appreciate the feedback. We'll pass it on to support. Dan asks, most realtors use .loop to send files to clients. Sorry if I said that wrong. However, any PDF files can be used, therefore they can't use my HTML report. What can be done on your end to work with .loop?
I'm actually looking into integrations. Loop's on our list. You are able to download the documents as a PDF. I think you lose a lot of the best features of our multimedia reports, because if you've got embedded videos, you've got 360 videos, you lose a lot of that. The real estate market, for better for worse, it lives on PDFs. There's a lot of space for digitization. There's a lot of space for modernization. I hate wet signatures and all that. So yeah, we are working with partners like .loop, because they're one of the main players for realtors. So yeah, we're looking at that solution. There may be some PDF exchanges. There may be other players like .loop that we're also looking into.
I thought it was interesting. A friend of mine on Facebook posted just yesterday that they just closed on a house, and they showed a photo that they had drive-by closing at their title company because of COVID. So people came out to the car in full face masks, gloves, and PPE equipment in order to get their signatures. It just struck me when I saw it of, sure, great innovation that part of the industry can continue, but it's 2020. There has to be progress made, to your point, in that industry where that sort of signature can be circumvented by DocuSign and so on. Okay, Dan, thank you for that question. Tom asks, will the web-based version be iOS compatible?
Yes, in a word. So it'll be, the initial version that we're coming out with is going to be based in a browser. It'll work across, we're testing it across all devices. It's going to work on desktop and mobile initially, then we're working on tablet views. And then later in the year, there's going to be a mobile application that works across iOS and Android.
Thank you. Stephen asks, when will template global updating be available? Been asking for years.
Yep, that's something that we're looking at with the milestone release. Reach out to me, pass on his information, and I'll reach out to him direct.
Sure. For the HomeGauge team in the background, could you make a note of Stephen's name there, and we'll reach out to you, Stephen. I'll leave it as marked as open on the Q&A for our team. We have one from Chris. Will the web-based writer allow for customization, such as making changes to comments and saving for later reports?
Yeah, so the initial one it's not going to be as customizable. That's a deliberate move. We want to make sure that it's as streamlined as possible. One of the things, if we were to look at the solution that we have right now, I think this is like an expert professional solution that there's some extensive training you can go through, but you can customize everything, and it's awesome. For some of the newer guys in the market, there's a lot of bells and whistles, but it can be overwhelming to get up and running with. So the web writer initially is aiming to make it as streamlined as possible. Some of the customization, so we're looking at allowing you to set custom comments. There's comments out of the box, and you'll be able to save comments for later use. There'll be the ability to add disclaimers, save template disclaimers that you might be able to use. I suggest if you want to see kind of the direction we're going, our PON session this afternoon will give you more of a window into that.
Great, thank you. Todd asks, I'm a single operator inspector. I use your product for single family, multifamily, commercial and industrial and apartment complexes. Will we be able to create the report with the web-based version the same way as in styles, materials and narrative, in the same way we manage the software with the desktop version?
It's going to be different. So I suggest show up for our PON session. We're going in a different direction with the web writer. We want to streamline it. You're going to be able to go through by system. It's a lot more straightforward to get up and running. I think anyone who's doing commercial inspections, anyone who's on the more advanced side, I'd say the web writer is probably going to be for you later in the year. The first versions that are coming out, we're really focused on. The big complaint I was hearing is new inspectors, our solution can be overwhelming. So the web writer is going to be for the newer inspector, and then we're going to be building out the feature set over the course of the next few months. And then towards the end of the year, that's when we're going to be building out the features for multi-inspector and some of the more advanced use cases like commercial.
And I think it's worth mentioning that we're not doing that in isolation or randomly. That is really from a lot of feedback through the beta programs that we were talking about. As a Brit, Mike, I don't know if you struggle. I really struggle to make sure I'm saying beta. We in England, for some reason, we say beta.
Been beaten out of me, don't worry.
Right, been too many years. Okay, this is a great question. Is there any plan to integrate the Texas wood destroying insect report as a separate peripheral for us to access in HomeGauge?
Yeah, we are looking at, it was the MPMA 33, which I know isn't the Texas one, but one of the things we learned from that was that there is a big market in some of these specific pest control forms. MPMA 33 was the first one that we addressed, and then we've had the support team put together a list of all the different forms that we should incorporate. We're considering making a separate package that gets you access to all these different kinds of forms. It'd be great if we could get the details of this gentleman. We'll make sure that that specific one's on the list, because we're putting together a forms package right now.
Yeah, it comes up as anonymous, so if that person would like to email me, dax@homegauge.com, dax@homegauge.com, just put something like wood destroying report in your subject line. We'll get that to Mike and his team. Jennifer asks, I have a lot of reviews I receive from HomeGauge. How can I send attached to other social media accounts or web pages? I'm not quite sure about that one, Jennifer, in terms of the question. If you want to send a follow-up one with clarification, I will put that one to Mike, or again, you can email me.
I think I may have some insight into that. So you can have a report on HomeGauge itself, but you want the ability to distribute that because there might be a wider reach, sharing those reviews directly on Facebook or on Google as part of your business. We can speak to the web team about that. Looking at the review system, we're considering kind of overhauling some of those things anyway. So yeah, definitely feed that in.
Okay, great. Question from William. Took us 9 months to get going efficiently, but we love HomeGauge now that we have our comments built out. We're on site 2 to 3 hours, go home and attach the radon, sewer and termite contractors report within 15 minutes and we're done. Oh, not a question, Mike. Very efficient for our team. Thank you, William. We appreciate you sharing that. You're all making it too easy. Come on, let me give Mike something hard. Todd, as a follow-up to our comment talking about millennials and different audiences and communication styles, says the majority of their clients text. He says 90%. That's very interesting. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Alden asks, will the Android version ever have the ability to add arrows, etc.? This takes a lot of extra time after the report is brought back to the desktop version.
So we are looking at the annotator for the web, the new web-based version. There's going to be a new range of mobile apps that are going to come out with that. So I'd say annotating on the existing iOS version we'll look at, but it's likely to be addressed for the newer mobile app that comes out later in the year.
Great. Mike, I'm going to ask you this question. You may not have an answer if you don't. I probably do on this one. Robert asks, do you have any advice on using Dragon Speak to possibly bringing my reporting time down? Does it work? Is there any talk-to-text software that has helped with expediting reporting?
I mean, you'll feel this, Dax.
Sure.
It depends on your accent. So I have really mixed experiences with talk to text generally. I can't believe it's 2020, and like when I was a kid, I remember this thing starting to, well, not when I was a kid, when I was a lot younger, maybe in my teenage years, I remember this software being around. It's okay. I really think it depends on your personal experience. I know Dragon's been around a while. I know people use on some of the mobile applications. They use the speak to text. I think it's individual experience. Personally, I find that Google understands me a little better than iOS, but that's my experience. I have to put on an American accent to be understood. So I don't think there's any great solutions out there. This is why we've kind of held back going too far into this realm, because I just don't see any that are really great.
I think it's still sadly that way. I do have, I suppose, 3 quick pieces of advice on it. One is early on in my career, I came up through the advertising agency world, places that looked not unlike the Mad Men TV show, amusingly. They, in that agency, we used a lot of talk to text for a while, certainly tried it. It was very clear that we had to set up two very distinct profiles, because it is not uncommon in that industry that lunch might include a couple of cocktails. And the recognition rate of how your speech changes from a couple of lunchtime cocktails goes down significantly. I'm sure as professional inspectors, you're not drinking on the job, so that's probably not relevant to you. Two, I would say, I watch my kids doing their homework. I have 4 teenage daughters, and I watch them doing it, and they get it to work pretty damn good in Google. So there is something there, but what they then do is they use Grammarly, which is a great app that plugs into your browser, and they use Grammarly to kind of whip through and do more than just spell checking. Might be some useful tips for you in that. Let's keep rolling.
Just related to that, Dax, another angle that we're looking at to tackle that, because I do think, what's the stat? You speak 6 times faster than you can type. We are looking at another way of presenting reports. So you could look at it a different way and say, you could record a walkthrough for the property. I will say video transcription is getting a lot better. So as you'll see with Zoom, you can transcribe the audio from a video. One of the things we're looking at is giving someone a video walkthrough of their report, or giving them a quick walkthrough of the property. The transcriptions that come out of that are not so bad. So a session this afternoon, it's the desktop, it's actually part of the buyer desktop feature review. But there's a feature that I'm considering there, which I'd like some feedback on. So I recommend showing up for that if you've got opinions.
Okay, great. Brian also asked about the talk to text. Thank you for submitting that one, Brian. Okay, we've got a, good, you're helping me out here and giving me difficult questions for Mike. This is one, Mike, that you have addressed in the last session, and I think over the last 6 months, between Paul, yourself, myself, and some other members of the team have been very transparent about what went in the past, and then really why your team's here. I'll read it as written. Have loved HomeGauge for years. However, it is disheartening that little things we have begged for never happen, like an owner button or a type of global list for common text in a picture, or a click or unclick all in our download app list. Your customer service is great, but you never do what we beg for. We do warranty inspections.
Okay. I'd say for those longs specifically, we have made a big change in the last year or year and a half. I do understand that probably 3-4 years ago, there was the ability to call in to support, and you'd say, hey, look, I want this button to say this, and changes would happen really quick. That would jump straight over to a developer, they'd make changes, they'd go in place with the software. We've got a lot more users now. So any moves that we make, we've got to consider how it impacts everyone. So there could be one straightforward change for one group of users, really impacts another group. We're really trying to level up, think of the whole user base, and think also a lot more towards the future of kind of what are we really trying to address. So I do get some of the frustration where, hey, look, I just want this wording change. But often what's going on behind the scenes is we're meeting regularly with support. They come up with some of these asks, and we're really trying to look at like, what is the theme behind all these things? So we're not, if it is a simple wording change, sometimes like we're working on one right now for Schedule Now. Whereas one of the beta testers said, hey, look, buyer and seller doesn't really cut it. You need to, there could be investor and things like that. So we're looking at changing those words. Really what we're trying to do is like, what's really the thing behind this ask? And you may pull together a few of these like straightforward things and go, actually there's a deeper problem that we need to address. So it takes a little longer, but that's kind of the way that we're working. So I get the frustration. It's more to do with a different way of working. What we will do is we'll be transparent, and we will be saying, hey, look, this particular thing, no, we're looking at the deeper ask behind it, or this, we found that actually it may have a detrimental effect on some of these users. We've decided not to do it. So we're going to be more transparent on some of those things.
Mike, so we're down to about 6 minutes and we have a long list of questions. Could my team who are listening in make sure you go through the Q&A and make a note of the name and the questions that we don't get to in this session, because we're not going to get to them all. So I'm going to rattle through some short answers. We can always follow up with more later. Brian asks, are you able to simplify your video process, specifically the loading process after the exceeded amount? Pass it, we understand that, and we can always come back to Brian.
Okay. If this is relating to exceeding the maximum report size, we've got some increases in the pipeline. We understand that everyone's working with video right now. So the next couple of weeks, we're making some infrastructure changes. All the caps are going to be raised.
Great. Travis asks, have you considered adding a monitor section to the report? I get that question from realtors all the time.
No, I'd like to explore that one. That's a good one.
Travis, feel free to email me, dax@homegauge.com, or the team will reach out to you on that one. Let's keep going. Keith asks, will there be an extra fee for the iOS version of the web-based version? Oh, sorry, iOS version or web-based version? No.
If you've got a subscription, you'll get access to it.
Yep, great. Interesting, another voice recognition question. Pass on that one for now. Will you fix the problem of pasting photos onto a summary item when editing? It always crashes when I do this. That's Steve.
Yeah, let's pass that on. We are reviewing the list of items for the next release, the next list of bugs. So review it and I'll make sure, send it over and I'll make sure we put that on the list.
Great. We'll follow up with you, Steve. Ed asks, what is the best camera app to use on an iPad today? Ed, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip that. We can always reach out to you on that one. I just want to get these questions to Mike.
Quickly on that one, we're moving away from that. We'd like you to be able to use the native apps. That's why we're raising caps on cloud transfer, and also with the new application, we're going to be allowing you to use the native camera.
Great. David asks, will our templates and comments be transferable to the new formats you are developing?
We are working on that. In the first iteration, no. It will be, we're looking at what people would like to transfer. So sign up for the beta, and when we start visiting migrating existing users, then we'll look at what tools we can use.
Okay. I'd love to read out all the compliments you're getting, Mike, about what your team are doing, but I'm going to keep hitting you with the awkward questions instead. Is there any way to add the date time on photo on Companion?
Currently, no, but that's an interesting one. There's a lot of the metadata is already included within the photo. I don't see, we could look at that. It's a good idea.
Okay. Altman, can you make a platform for stucco inspections?
We'll look at, I need some more detail on that one.
Okay. And if that is not our presenter asking who's doing a session on stucco this afternoon, please do join into that, obviously, because that sounds very relevant to you. It may be our host. Yeah. Tom, suggest exploring several radon companies reporting for attachment into the report. I personally use RTCA and have for several years. However, in the past have used AirCheck and ProLab. I'm sure other inspectors have their favorite. Okay, so that's just a follow-up to when we were talking about integrating with radon.
Good though, I'm getting lots of demand on radon.
Carl asks, will you ever have a language translator for HomeGauge?
We are looking at support for different markets. Translating any software for international markets is a lot more difficult than you'd imagine, especially with something as complicated as HomeGauge. We've considered it. I think if we were going to go that angle, we'd have to look at kind of our user base and where the biggest demand is, but there's no plans right now this year. We've had some requests from our Canadian cousins for French. That's what we're considering, but it's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah. For the person who asked about dragon speech, etc., there's a lot of mixed comments from people, which is interesting. Billy says he has no problem with talk to text on the companion, small edits only necessary. Other people saying they've given up on it completely because it takes too much time. Interesting to hear that's such an inconsistent experience for anybody. Jay asks, any developments on spell check for email notifications to clients regarding reports?
So there's a lot, if you're doing anything from the browser, so the inspector dashboard, There's a lot of spell checks that are built into browsers already. I do hear that the spell check within the desktop application, that's been heavily requested. That's something we're looking into. Can't make any promises on that. We're seeing if there's any easy integrations there.
Daniel had a quick follow-up to the last question about timestamping, saying having timestamps on certain pitches can help liability. That is interesting to hear. Is there a general overall time amount of video capacity that can be easily transferred to the cloud from the portable device on the site, so I don't have to manually transfer? I'm looking for a rough time or amount of video.
Especially with mobile, it depends on what your network is. Like,
yeah. I would say if you're on iOS, for instance, on Apple, there is the option in your primary settings that gives you the choice to go with more compatible or smaller files. Good to play around with. Mike, we're at time. There's one last thing I'd just like you to do for the audience. So we've got a number of sessions running this afternoon that you and Arpan are doing. Can you just tell the audience very quickly what those sessions should expect to be?
Sure. So I'm going to be doing a working session for the HomeGauge dashboard. This is really something that would normally be for a focus group for beta users, but we're experimenting because we've got so many people here. So I'll be walking through kind of some feedback that we've received about the dashboard, and I'll be going through some feature ideas that we're considering. And it's a voting session, so people can talk about, people can vote on what they want to happen next. That's going to go straight into the product development process. Then Arpan's going to be giving an update on the web report writer. He'll be giving you a preview for what the beta users are seeing. He'll also be giving you a sign-up page, so anyone who's interested. I've tasked him with radically expanding the number of people on the beta test. And then I'll be giving a working session on Schedule Now. It's not just a preview. I'll be showing you how to get it set up, the basics. Anyone can follow along on that session and get scheduling set up for themselves there and then.
Wonderful. Mike, thank you very much. To our audience, thank you for all the questions. We didn't get to them all. I did try and ask Mike the harder, more difficult ones for him. For you, the team's made a note of your names and questions. I'm going to mark them as read for now so we can move on to the next session. Mike, if you'd like to sign off, that's great. And I will bring in our next group of people.